Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Everyone, welcome to the show. So 55-year-old Pennsylvania resident and reformed sovereign citizen Pauline Bauer was a lot of fun to cover, I have to admit. She kept it lively with her court filings that she drafted. So here's what preceded all of that, though. Bauer went to D.C. with a group of people, including her co-defendant, William Blauser. She and her friends were part of the crowd that first breached barricades on the East Plaza of the Capitol. And she was recording a video just outside of the East Rotunda doors when the police deployed chemicals into the crowd. They were trying to prevent them, obviously, from overtaking the building. Well, Bauer knew, right? She knew from the barricades, she knew from the chemicals, she wasn't welcome on the Capitol grounds. She wasn't welcome inside the building. Bauer and her friends were then heard on video. They were discussing how bad is it going to be when they tear gas us. So they knew what to expect, and they, again, knew they weren't welcome. Well, a while later, there were other members of the mob who had gotten in through other entrances. They forced the doors open from the inside where Bauer and her friends were standing. So she and her friends illegally entered the building at that point. They made their way to the rotunda. There was a line of officers that had established themselves in a doorway. They were guarding this doorway, which led to other areas of the Capitol, including Nancy Pelosi's office, Speaker of the House at that point. Bauer made her way to the front of this police line. She started screaming at them. She was pointing at them. She yelled, quote, "We want Nancy Pelosi. That's who we want." And then she continued screaming, quote, "Bring them out. You bring them out here or we're coming in. They're criminals. They need to hang. Bring Nancy Pelosi out here now. We want to hang that fucking bitch. Bring her out." Well, an officer ordered Bauer and the others to get back, and he attempted to kind of push her away with his baton. You know, they hold it sideways, they kind of use it to back the crowd up. Well, when he did that, she shoved him with both hands, and that she yelled at him, quote, "Fuck you, you son of a bitch, you back up." Well, during Bauer's trial, this particular officer testified that her actions really got the crowd worked up. And he became worried because he said, you know, if I become more aggressive with her, it could escalate the situation because people will think I'm beating up on a woman. And then all of the men in the crowd are going to just surge forward. Well, even though it was Bauer's friend who finally pulled her away, like the cop didn't escalate the situation, her friend, William Blauser, pulled her away. Body cam footage shows that the mob still totally erupted in violence. Eventually, though, the police were able to forcibly remove her and the others from the rotunda. And then following the Capitol attack, Bauer posted on social media, and she admitted that she was, quote, inside. And she said that they had the right to do this and that they needed to do this to, quote, take back our country from communism. As if. And then in another comment, Bauer said in part, quote, "We took over the Capitol like patriots." And then she went on to share false stories about the Democrats. She, you know, included fairy tales spread by the letter of the alphabet that shall not be named, that I can't talk about anymore, apparently, that comes between, you know, P and R. Otherwise, I will get suspended again. Anyway, Bauer continued to deride Nancy Pelosi, and she admitted, quote, "There was no Antifa, just pissed off patriots." So we've heard this over and over again. These people admit themselves, no, it was not Antifa. There was no Antifa there, right? But then one day after that, Bauer starts going along with the right-wing narrative that she and others had, quote, been let in. And then Bauer admitted to trying to stop the certification of the election. She wrote, quote, "We all got maced trying to stop what was happening." So Bauer was arrested on May 19th of 2021, and she was charged with obstructing an official proceeding, entering a restricted building or grounds, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, and parading or demonstrating in a Capitol. Following Bauer's arrest, she fought for months against the system. She fired her attorney. She submitted numerous, nearly incoherent filings with the court. She claimed to be a sovereign citizen. She said, I'm not required to abide by the rules of the court. And for instance, in one filing, it was 114 pages, just rambling, pleading, challenging the court's right to impose any kinds of rules or restrictions on her. So after months and months of this lunacy and multiple violations of her pretrial release, by the way, the judge had enough. He revoked her bail. So Bauer sat in jail for, I think it was more than a year. If not, it was close to it. And then she finally said, okay, I'll follow the rules. She still refused a plea deal, though. So in January of 2023, she was convicted on all counts in a bench trial with U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden. So based on the felony conviction of the obstruction charge, she was facing up to 20 years in prison, 3 years of probation, and $250,000 in fines. That's never granted in these cases unless the charge involves sedition. But when the judge rendered his verdict, he told the prosecutor, quote, "On the subject of sentencing, we will consider a government motion for departure in light of the defendant's obstruction while on the witness stand." So basically because she lied. They knew she was lying. He called her out for it. So the prosecutor requested the upper end of the standard federal sentencing guidelines because, and I should point this out, what the maximum is like pie in the sky, right? The 20 years. The federal sentencing guidelines are what they usually go by. And typically, unless somebody has like a huge rap sheet, a huge, history of horrific violence and other criminal acts, they typically go for the mid-range of what the sentencing guidelines are. So the probation department looks at everything. They consider past criminal history. They consider how they've behaved while they've been on pretrial release. Or if they've been in jail, how they've acted in jail. They look at all the circumstances. Are there aggravating factors? Are there factors that weigh in favor of leniency? And then they factor all that in and they look at what's the average, for these crimes? What are people typically being sentenced to? Here's what we recommend, 36 months to 57 months, something like that. Typically, the prosecutor will go for the middle of that range. But in this case, they went above. They went to the highest end of that range that was recommended. So they asked for 78 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. I should point out, too, they also consider, was this a plea deal or did they take this to trial? And what were they convicted of? So if it's a plea deal, they're going to give them a break. If it's a trial and they get convicted on a lot of crimes, like she did in this case, they typically, the sentencing guidelines are much more severe. Well, I couldn't locate any details about what Bauer or the judge may have said at the sentencing hearing, but Bauer was sentenced to 27 months in prison, 2 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. So I'm not really sure, where this upward variance was that the judge said he would impose. But given that it's Judge McFadden, this is pretty substantial. He's a Trump appointee. He served on Trump's transition team. He is really anti-BLM. So he typically gives these defendants Netflix and chill sentences. So this is a pretty substantial one for him. As I always say with McFadden, this is the best we could have hoped for. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like this video, share it, subscribe if you have not already. If you can donate, that also truly helps. Love you all. Take care, and I'll talk with you soon.